All right, welcome to this week's episode of the Mind Soul Connection podcast. My name is Jaime Blaustein. I'm the CEO of the Sylvia Brafman Mental Health Center, and here with my co-founder, Ben Brafman, the Chief Clinical Officer. Welcome. It's starting to cool down here in Florida.
Finally.
Yeah, turning the corner into post-Labor Day life, kids going back to school and the weather cooling down and football starting. And so I'm sort of happy to be out of August and looking forward to digging in today to actually a little bit more of a fun and serious at the same time. I should say thought-provoking topic. Pick your poison. I want to look at different addictions.
Okay.
And I want to get your clinical perspective on them.
Okay.
I have a lot of questions, and I think a lot of people are interested in the difference between drug addiction versus alcoholism versus gambling versus food. I want to draw some comparisons among these and talk about them. So first, I just want to define addiction, and I'm going to give you my definition based on like what I was brought up in and in 12-step rooms and things of that nature and just my own experience. And then I want to ask for your clinical definition, right? So when I say I'm an addict, right? For so many years, I thought that meant, I just know that it causes consequences in my life that it doesn't cause normal earth people, as I like to call them, right? But today I understand a little bit more of a nuanced definition of that, which is I have this really three components. One, we'll call it a physical allergy. It basically means I start and I cannot stop. Something takes over and I lose the power to stop. It's a phenomenon of craving. And I don't know the mechanism behind that. I don't think, there's different theories on it. Some people say it's a gene. Some people say if you have this combination of genes, right, or X percentage out of 100, you have it. If you have, some people say it's an enzyme thing in terms of how we process chemicals. Mm-hmm. Some people say it's a chemical imbalance. And I don't know, and I don't really care because my experience confirms that when I start drugs and alcohol, I cannot stop. I have to get stopped. Okay. Second component here is, we'll call it a mental obsession. Mental obsession is why I can't stay stopped. So let's just say it's drugs and alcohol, right? And I get out of a rehab and I have 30 days clean or 90 days or even 10 years, 20 years. It's the subtle insanity that precedes starting again, meaning my mind feeds me a lie. I can do one, I deserve it, nobody will know, and I believe that lie and I start again. And frankly, that's the true insanity of addiction, right? It's like I'm not dependent on anything anymore at this point, whether it's the behavior or the substance. And I know the consequences that lay ahead if I continue to do it. And I know that I'm not supposed to be doing it, yet I go back to it anyway. And typically that's coming in the form of a delusion. And I start again and I kick off that allergy and I cannot stop. And then the last part is the spiritual hole. Again, I talked about this on another episode. A doctor might call it anxiety or depression. The way that I view the spiritual malady, it's an image that comes into my mind, which is I imagine myself being in an apartment alone. For some reason, New York City pops up by myself, miserable, and that every single person I've ever met is having this amazing party somewhere, like from different parts of my life that in reality don't actually know each other. And they're having this amazing party the night of their lives, and they're talking about what a loser I am that I'm not there. That to me encapsulates this spiritual hole. It's a feeling of lack of fulfillment. It's a feeling of separation. And so what was taught to me is that if I'm going to lose the mental obsession to do the drug or the drink or the behavior, I need to fill that hole again, whether that's depression or a spiritual malady.
Right.
And if I fill that hole, I will lose the obsession. And if I lose the obsession, then I don't need to worry about the allergy because I'm not going to pick up the first one. And so that is the framework that I've viewed addiction through, and it's made sense to me. And it is certainly applicable to my experience with drug addiction. But I want to ask you, from a more clinical perspective, what is addiction?
So there's a number of ways that I could go about defining it. The first thing I want to do is just sort of create a foundation here, and that is that addiction, it impacts the main four areas of your life. You know, your physical well-being, mental, emotional well-being, your social well-being, and your spiritual well-being. I mean, that's when I'm talking about addiction and we're talking about this, that's it. Those are the areas. You can call them something else, but those are the areas. And so basically addiction can be viewed as a love-hate relationship with an entity, something, or a person with negative consequences, with devastating consequences. That's one thing you can call it. It's also a disease of the brain. It's a disease of perception. So imagine for a moment that you go to a pool. You're a little kid who goes to a pool and they look down and they see a reflection in the pool. What do they see? What do they see? They see themselves, right? Mm-hmm. They think that person is right there.
Yeah.
So they lean forward and they fall in and they drown. And that's metaphorically what happens with the disease of addiction. Your perception is broken. You don't view things the way that, as you said, earth people or normal people view things. Another way to look at it clinically is that I need this, whatever it is, regardless of any consequences to anyone, person, place, or thing. I need this. I have to have this.
Yeah.
It's no longer it's a nice want. You know, it's I have to.
It becomes, this is what I do. This is now my primary purpose, even despite the fact that not only is there external unmanageability, but I think we don't talk enough about the internal unmanageability, right? Like, of course, if I'm an addict, I'm going to probably start blowing money. I'm probably going to, suffer, family. There's all the external stuff, of course, but it's the internal stuff too. So there's certainly unmanageability. There's certainly powerlessness. And are those themes that you talked about and that I talked about, do you think they're consistent throughout all addictions, regardless of what the behavior or thing is?
Yes. Yeah. You can play on words a little bit. And if I had to, gun to head, if you asked me, chisel it down, to me, it's a disease of the brain.
Yeah.
It's a misperception of things.
So alcoholism and addiction, they've somehow been separated in terms of like I believe they are absolutely the same thing, right? Like, look, if you took all of the drugs off the planet somehow, I would be a textbook alcoholic, right? It's just that I chose and preferred the feeling of certain drugs, right? But to me, look, there's nothing inherent about alcohol that like makes it distinct from, Coke, heroin, all that other stuff, right?
Right.
I think it's the social element of it, right? That it's legal, right? So there's a fellowship, AA.
Yep.
There's an NA fellowship. Right. It's frankly the same thing. In 90% of the people at AA meetings are addicts.
It's the same thing. The approach might be a little different.
Right. Well, is it a socially driven thing, or is there anything inherent about addiction to call it any narcotic versus alcohol?
No, I mean the disease of the brain is the same.
Right, the mechanism.
Right, but and sometimes the function of it is a little different. Like when you're an alcoholic, part of being an alcoholic for many people is the social aspect of it. They get addicted to the lifestyle. But let's remember this. Let's not use kitty gloves with this. When we're talking about addiction, you're talking about end stage cancer, right? Like you're drinking alone,
right?
Like they don't even want to be around.
Now there are people that come into recovery that again, it can look different for different people, right? For some people, it's waking up and hitting the bottle.
Yep.
And for others, it actually stays social on the surface. But if you ask a lot of those people, they'll tell you, I didn't feel like I was connecting.
No, they're alone.
Most people, I mean, for me, at the very end, all I wanted was to be alone in a room with my drugs.
Yeah, I don't know anybody that is a social crack addict,
right?
Or shoots dope and they're
with
friends and they're having a ball game and
Yeah.
watching a ball game, eating pizza. Like that's not what this is.
No, we like to go in a dark hole.
I like to say, because I like to keep things simple. Addicted to it, addicted to all.
Yeah.
Right. That's how you have to approach it. And I go back to this is a disease of the brain.
Yeah. The thing I do see that's a little bit different, and I don't think that, because we were just focusing on the mechanism, right?
Right.
But so I'm actually going to hone in on the impact of thereafter, which is alcohol tends to be a slower death, is what I've seen. Drugs will take you out quick, right? And that's why, like, I'm actually really grateful that by 18, it was so clear I am an addict. Because it forced me into enough unmanageability to finally wave the white flag at 23, 24 years old. I think that I often, I sponsor and work with a ton of guys that are a lot older. And like, they were good through their 20s, 30s, 40s. It's like, at 45, 50, 60, they start to cross that line into powerlessness, aka into chronic alcoholism. It's not always that way. And frankly, when I see someone who's like 19 and they're like a true alcoholic, that almost scares me more than like a true heroin addict.
Right.
Because
they've done a lot of research.
Well, not only that, but it escalated quickly, yes. Right? They're the real deal.
Yes. Yes. And here's what's devastating. What's devastating is that whether it's drugs or alcohol, there are grave consequences. You can be 18 or 19 years old and starting your career as an alcoholic, get in a car because you're wasted and you slam into a telephone pole and you're dead. Or worse, you slam into a family of 5 and they're dead or you're dead or something like that. Like, was that person at 18 or 19 an alcoholic? Probably not yet.
Right.
But they were on their way. And the fact that they made that judgment, that's not a good scenario.
Yeah. And I think, at least in terms of the types of folks that we treat at Sylvia Brafman, it is somewhat important to draw the distinction between the real deal chronic addict alcoholic, which in my view has those 3 things that I mentioned, and the hard drinker or the hard user, and then the moderate drinker, the moderate user.
Right.
So there is a line, and it represents power of choice on that spectrum, where there are certain people that maybe they end up in rehab. It certainly causes problems in their life. But if they absolutely have to stop because of a circumstance and stay stopped, they can do that. And so sometimes it's hard to differentiate those. Sometimes it's hard to differentiate, okay, maybe they don't have the mechanism of being a true addict in terms of allergy, obsession, malady. But maybe they have 2 of the 3, and maybe they have a co-occurring like a mental health thing going on, and they just use the substances to mitigate the impact of the underlying condition. So I leave figuring that out to experts like you.
Sure.
But it's definitely something that like we think about too, right? Is this person like the real deal, or are they using to cover something up? Not that it's mutually exclusive. It could probably be both, but
right. And treatment is different. Treatment, you don't have to be addicted to be in treatment. So it's, so we deal with it differently. It could be, you could be right. It could be that they can smoke marijuana casually. It can be that they can drink everyone, but their life is unmanageable in some ways.
Right.
They're in treatment for a reason.
Sure. And if I just know that if you're like me, if you're wired like me, and I am the real deal, if I smoke weed, maybe I can go, a couple days just doing that and be okay.
Yeah.
I know in my core very quickly, I will be doing coke, shooting heroin, smoking crack, kicked out of my apartment in an alley, right? Like in my core, I know that's where it goes.
Right.
But not for everybody. There are some people out there that can, and are they the real addict alcoholic? I don't know. I tend to think that they don't need exactly what I need, but there's some sort of wellness package out there for them. So I don't like to get too technical about this, but I'm just grateful that I know my truth, and that's my truth.
That's fantastic.
And so thank God I figured that out early.
Yes.
I mean, seriously. So I want to dig into gambling addiction. Oh, my mom is FaceTiming me. Hi, Mom. You'll see this at some point in the future. So I can't talk right now. Sorry.
Good old mom.
Yeah, good old mom.
Say hello to Karen.
I will. You know, what's funny is that when I was thinking about making a big move from Wall Street down here, and I told my mom initially that I was thinking about starting a treatment center.
Yeah.
She initially was like, "No, don't do that. You're like 30 minutes away from me in New York. You have this amazing job." And then I told her it was with you. And she immediately forwarded me emails from like 3 years after you kicked me out of Destination Hope.
Yeah.
Where you were checking in to see how I was doing, and you know that meant a lot to her, and so she's super happy and grateful that I made this move. And, speaking of mom, so shout out to Karen.
Yes,
her name is Karen Epstein, which we like to joke is a really unfortunate name to have in 2023 between the Karen and the Epstein. But yeah, she's great. So gambling.
Yeah.
This is a scary one to me. It's scary to me because I don't have too much exposure to it, but the external unmanageability piles up so fast. Yeah. You have burned your life to the ground financially. As a result of that, it often obviously parlays into your relationships. You got people looking for you.
Yeah.
It happens very fast in a matter of moments. What are your thoughts on gambling addiction? I mean, certainly an addiction. I mean, I see a lot of people get clean from alcohol and drugs, and then that becomes the new thing.
Yeah.
I'm lucky. I've never really had an interest, and I know that I have potential if I work to. But you know, what's your take on that?
So,
and where does that sit on the spectrum of like severity of addictions?
It's what you just said. I mean, when you get to the addicted part of gambling, and you know, again, go back to the definition. You know what we're talking about. It's the same thing. It's a disease of the brain, and you have a certain perception of things, and you're off. And you know, just a quick story. I was in Vegas, and I literally witnessed a guy go to wherever you go to get money, and he mortgaged his house. Like he mortgaged his house. I saw another old woman who was wearing Depends while she was doing the video poker. Like again,
wearing what?
Depends, like diapers.
Oh,
you know, so she didn't have to go to the bathroom.
Oh God.
Like, I mean, you know, I mean, there's so many stories, but it's the same thing. It's, you know what it is? It's pleasure versus pain. It's I'm in pain because I can't tolerate something that's going on with me emotionally. And so I gotta have pleasure in my life. Right. And all I gotta do is win. Right.
Can I push back on that for a minute and
sure.
say it's euphoria and adrenaline as much as pleasure?
Sure.
I get what you're saying. There's
sure.
two sides to the coin, right?
Absolutely.
But you're looking for a hit.
You're looking for something, but you're literally get off on the gambling aspect of it. It's not the bet itself. It's not that. It's not the gamble itself. It's the lifestyle, right? And just like drug addiction, when you go meet your drug dealer, right? It's the lifestyle. It's like, is that his headlights?
I mean, that was almost the best part of that,
right? And so it's the same exact thing. The process is the same exact thing. There's going to be intangibles that are different, but yes, it affects the same part of the brain. That's a fact. A lot of times, alcoholism and gambling go together. Drug addiction and gambling go together. You can imagine why, right? Sometimes you got to be stoned to make some of these horrific bets and gamble on things that you shouldn't be gambling on.
Yeah.
You know,
the by definition too, you're not, if you have the mechanism of addiction that's active, right? You're not able to be intentional and methodical about how you place bets. So you're going to chase the high.
Yeah.
So you're naturally going to end in a hole if you're an addict, right? Like you win, and then I'm already like, I'm not even placing a bet right now, but I'm already like thinking, I'm like, oh, I got to win more.
Right.
Because it's the disease of more.
Right.
Addiction is I need more. Right. So naturally that always is going to end with a loss of some sort.
Right.
So maybe you can walk away once or twice, but you're going to feel that itch. I got to get more.
And it's the same draw that you feel as a drug addict, alcoholic. It's the same, that draw, that pull, that perception of reality.
Yeah.
It's the same draw. There's an older TV show called The Odd Couple, with Felix and Oscar. Felix is a neat freak. Oscar is he's a sloppy guy. He's a sports writer.
Like me and you.
Exactly. He's a sloppy guy, and he's a sports writer, and he's a gambler. I don't want to say degenerate gambler, but he's a gambler. Anyway, he gets Felix, who's this proper, he's a photographer. He's, everything is squared away. Anyway, there's an episode about gambling where Oscar gets Felix gambling, not hesitantly, and at the end of the show, they're betting on dog racing, and his dog loses by a nose, and Felix is going, "Yo, he lost it this much. I can't believe it. And he would have won if this, and this." And he's literally foaming at the mouth, and turning into something that he's not. And Oscar says to him very simply, because he knows who he is, Oscar, he says, "That's why it's called gambling. Because you'll lose your soul.
Mm-hmm.
You lose your soul over it, and because you're so close. You're so close to the win. You figured it out, and it's very similar. And I'm sure I know you've gone through this, but it's very similar to drug addiction. I can control my drug use on a Tuesday when the moon is full, right? And I'm wearing red. Then I know I can shoot heroin successfully. I'm right there. I almost did it. I overdosed, and I was in the hospital for 3 days. They pumped my stomach, but this time I figured it out. And so that's the draw that we suffer from.
Yeah, and I think that is the surrender where we actually have a shot to get better is when it goes from here to here.
Yeah,
and we feel, I finally believe that I cannot think my way out of this. I cannot crack the right combination.
Gotta get to that.
You can be 99.9% there, but you're still going to pick up. If you're 100% there, that you're fully surrendered. There's no wiggle room to rationalize.
You cannot think your way out of addiction.
A broken mind can't fix a broken mind.
That's true.
So I want to dig. We talked about sex addiction on a podcast a while back.
We just want to get to know you more.
And yeah. And I said to you, "Hey, is it an addiction?" Because I wasn't really sure. I think you heard a lot of. I think there are people that use it as a cop out, like I'm a sex addict, right? To sort of like explain, transgressions, if you will. But I asked you, is it a really like an addiction? You said absolutely, unequivocally, yes.
Mm-hmm.
It is certainly an addiction. It destroys lives, etc. Can you like kind of break that down a little more? And more specifically, I'm wondering okay, I think about like SLA, right? There are fellowships out there for sex, sex addiction. And I don't know, my gut is to ask you to quantify it, but I could see the addiction to 3 different things. Again, from my layman perspective, the physical piece, like the orgasm, basically,
right?
The intimacy and the closeness, and the validation, right? What is the main draw towards that? Is it kind of all of it kind of in one? Can you separate it out?
No, it's the same thing that we've been talking about. It's this perception that we have that we need to do this for whatever the reasoning is in your addicted brain. And if I don't do it, I'm going to die.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be some consequence. If I don't do this, I can't live.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not about the outcome, right? Just like you just said before, your lifestyle as a drug addict, that's the draw. And it's the lifestyle of the sex addict. That's the draw. Whatever you're into, that that's the draw. And then from there you break it down. Listen, there's massive consequences. Marriages are ruined because of it. You get, sexually transmitted diseases, and beyond that, there's all kinds of communicable diseases that people get. Children are affected by it. You break the law, right? But doing that, there's just so many consequences to it it's very similar to the other addictions that we've discussed.
And porn. I want to know about porn addiction, right? That's the thing that a lot of people, it's obviously so accessible. Is it the same mechanism as sex? I mean, I worked with someone once who told me like actually maybe we were talking to him together, like 15 or 16 hours a day.
Yeah.
Porn.
Yeah. That's right. It's the same mechanism. That's his heroin.
Right.
That's his marijuana. That's his cocaine. Same exact thing. And watching porn, you're stimulating that part of your brain, right? And you're creating this world that in reality doesn't exist. So for example, for men who watch porn, one of the things that gets them off is that they watch POV because the fantasy is that they're in the video. Right. And so that becomes their reality. That becomes, as you just said, their intimacy. That becomes that's love. Yeah. Like, there's a fantastical element to it. Right. Yeah. Right. No.
So we can dig into so many of these. I know gaming and phone addiction is certainly making headlines. We've had a couple of folks come to Sylvia Brafman who we've done a really great job. Props to you on that with the gaming addiction in particular.
Yeah.
But I do want to end on food. We both relate to this. I definitely have struggled with this, and for a while I was trying to figure out, am I like the quintessential food addict who belongs in a fellowship like OA, Overeaters Anonymous, which I've attended, or am I addicted to the sugar? Right? Am I just, is the allergy sort of being triggered by sugar, and I start and I can't stop? And I look at my conduct and my behavior, and I think it's the second one. When I have sugar, something goes off in my brain. I mean, I've dated girls before that have said to me, hey, don't eat ice cream in front of me because like you freak me out. Right? Like you get this crazy look in your eye.
He turns into a wearable.
Yeah, no, seriously. Like even actually dinner like a week ago, and this girl who I didn't even it was this girl that I hadn't even met, and somebody said, should we get dessert? And she was like, oh my God, the look on your face. She didn't even know that about me, but like it does something to me.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely there for me to some extent, but I mean, I know people that have really struggled with this, and the challenging thing about it,
poison. That's
poison. It really is.
I mean, that's just another drug.
I mean, I used to go in whatever. I'm not going to go into war stories with peanut butter, but
let me share something with you. So I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I gotta be honest, it saved my life. I was about 30 pounds overweight, ate like crap. My mood was not good. And I spent a weekend in the hospital. I remember this, not knowing what the hell my life was going to look like, completely overwhelmed, didn't know what diabetes truly was. Listen, they never teach us how to eat. They teach us, here's your food, just eat. They don't teach us how to eat, what to put first and all of that stuff. And it's a battle, and just like we've talked about how there's influences, right? There's cultural influences in DNA and genetics, being Jewish and having, having generations come from the Holocaust of like complete devastation and not knowing where your next meal is going to come from. I mean, I grew up in a household where literally at every angle there was food everywhere, and that was love. Yeah. Right. That was love. And that was Sylvia again. Shout out to Sylvia Brafman. But food is slightly different in this way. We need food.
I know. That's what my next point.
We need food, right? I mean, we got to eat, and we just need to be careful. Yeah. Diabetes in a warped way, in a weird way, it saved me because I started to eat better.
Yeah. It provided a guardrail for you. Unfortunately, through health consequences, but fortunately, like you said, right? Because that's what they do in some of the fellowships around this. Again, you have to eat, right?
Yep.
So you need to establish your baseline, your ideal. And sex addicts do this too, right? Because they don't not date. Or maybe early on, right? But people that are, sex and love addicts, right? You need to establish an ideal and a baseline. And to what extent can you abide by that? And if you don't, it's considered a relapse, right? So when I was dabbling in OA, it felt kind of funny at the time. And I don't think I necessarily belong in that fellowship, but I would text the guy that was sponsoring me like, hey, I got to get honest. Like, I had a low-fat yogurt in the middle of the night. And he was like, all right, back to day one.
Oh my God.
But, it's a real thing.
Yeah,
And
it is.
And so, this has been super insightful. I think my takeaway here is, what you said. I'm just going to use your words. Addicted to it, addicted to all.
Yep.
Just, it kind of rears its head in different ways and has different flavors. But I'm really glad that we have solution today. And
yes.
And that, some of the struggles that I've gone through and that you've gone through have actually turned out to be an enhancement to our lives as a result of recovery. So this is great. I'm looking forward to next week. We've got your son on, Jacob Brafman, and we're going to dig into his experience and your experience, and it should be interesting. So thank you, everybody, for watching. Please follow us, comment, like, share. Really trying to get this podcast off the ground and get it to as many people as possible. So thank you very much.
All right.